All right, I'm bringing our panel on this. T.J. McCormick, Republican consultant here. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. Andrew Whitman, senior political correspondent. And T.J., we all had a very spirited debate on this. We also got into some of the legality of it. We looked at the statutes, and they're pretty open-ended. There's discretion that's here. And it always worries me about this one. But what do you think, specifically about the Peterson case? And this gray area, at least for some, between what's disciplining and what's abuse.
That was a lot to absorb, especially hearing was the Georgetown professor somehow circling back and we're hearing that it's a black tradition in the South to beat like that, and is he saying that it's the white guy's fault?
Well, he made it clear when you read the whole Dyson piece. Hold on, that he believes it is completely wrong-headed. And anybody, for example, when you hear spare the rod, spoil the child, and they think it's biblical. It's not, by the way. It has no religious bearing at all, and some people connote that. And he says it's very bad. And for any African Americans to justify it as it's okay is take a step back. But he said if you go back to the roots of it, it's rooted back.
So he's blaming the white guys for the bad black behavior. That's what it sounded like to me. I just wanted to point that out as being unbelievable.
How about we go to discipline?
Okay, it was part of the package, so I'm commenting on it. Okay. Now, discipline. No, I do not strike. I won't hit, and I mean, I just won't. I probably easier for me to say because I have 2 little daughters, and you probably have to travel a lot further emotionally to get to the point where you're actually going to smack a little girl on the bottom. I never will. I think it crosses a line. No, I'm not going to be a Puritan and say that nobody should ever spank their child with an open hand on a bum. I mean, but picking up an object, Rich, I can't, and I would imagine all of us around, buddy, can you imagine picking up an object, making the conscious decision to bring it down upon a 4-year-old? That is savage behavior done by anyone, especially a massive 200-plus pound professional athlete from the National Football League. It's jarring, and it's not of this century. It's not of this
Richard,
time.
have you ever noticed when you're out publicly and children will misbehave in a very bad way? I don't know if you've noticed this, but rarely it's an African American child that's acting out like that. African American mothers are not having it, and so we can all agree to disagree on a form of discipline and so on, but African American in the black community, if you act up, 9 times out of 10, you are going to get a spanking in some way. Black mothers are not having it. Now, in this case, we're talking about a father and a son.
But you know what, Dom, for me, I think what's gotten lost is we wouldn't be having this conversation if you spanked this kid. For me, I think that we had this debate, and after we guys broke, I brought in the legal panel on this, and we got into the legality of it. It's pretty clear to me. If you want to discipline your kid, you should discipline your kid. However, nobody should be able to say, well, in my house, I use an extension cord on my kids. There is a thing of abuse.
Richard,
if you can't discipline your kid with your hand, and you got to go to a prop, I'm sorry,
Richard,
there are lines.
Richard,
you got the wooden spoon, you just hold it up?
There are lines, but in the black community, an extension cord, I'm not saying that it's right, but an extension cord has been an acceptable form of discipline. I was spanked once with an extension cord, and it's one of the worst beatings that you can imagine.
This is
it's
amazing.
Almost like, but see, you got to understand we come from 2 different communities.
But we all live in the same country, okay? And we all have things like, just because somebody pick a different ethnicity, they would do something else. We have laws in this country.
Of course.
We all have, and a 4-year-old kid has no recourse, okay? So it's not like, okay, they can go to law enforcement, So it's our job to protect those who can't protect themselves. And I'm not some little, I get it, okay? I got smacked too. But my old man brought out an extension cord. We're having a different conversation. My point is, we should be able, I think, to, without hesitation, and even the prosecutor in Texas is going down this line here, right? You can't break out props to hit a 4-year-old. We can
and
have
say
a line.
that it's tradition.
Okay, and traditions change in this country.
Yeah.
There are things that we used to that were acceptable a generation ago that aren't acceptable now.
Yeah.
So props are bad, but can't you inflict abuse on a child with your hand?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So then why are you or anybody else the arbiter of what techniques can be applied during parenting short of abuse? And each abuse case, as I was saying last night, has to be judged on its own merits and with the mitigating factors that go into it. But since you can abuse somebody with a hand, you can abuse somebody with a belt,
I'll tell you why.
you can abuse somebody with a switch, and
I'll tell you why, though. This is where we part company.
It's a nuance only a parent can get, right?
If I follow this logic and I go down the extending road on this one, you hear people talking out loud right now, and it's not just the mom of Adrian Peterson who say, well, that's the way it was for me. So if I follow that thread, whatever anybody thinks is suitable to do to a 4-year-old, they should do it because it's whatever in their head is sufficient. And for me, we've done over time, like people used to say, well, I'll know how much I can drink and drive. I know how good a driver I can be when I did. We changed the law and we put alcohol limits in terms of what you can legally or not consume and get behind the car. It didn't used to always be that way. People used to drive as fast as they wanted because some people say, I'm great at speeding and driving. We put speed limits in. We put limits in this country to what you can and can't do when it jeopardizes other people's safety. You're saying we can't do that for a 4-year-old?
There's a reason why your prop law isn't a law, because nobody wants anybody else telling them how to parent and punish their children. We got a difference of opinion on the Facebook responses that we read because people punish their children differently and they have different views on it. Nobody wants anybody else telling them how to raise or how to handle their children. There is abuse that's possible using any scenario. But how many times do we have this conversation?
What about how we engage or deal with our girlfriends or wives or husbands? Or you know what? She didn't listen to me. So you know what? I gave her a little belt. Gave her a belt. Gave her a shot at the back of my hand because we disagreed on it was our 5th wedding anniversary and she threw the spaghetti, so I smacked her. Hey, that's how I do it. You know what I mean?
That's what I grew up in. That was the environment that I grew up. That it was tolerable or right to strike. Hey, you know what? My point is, when we enter in discretion, which I understand why, okay, and I get it. I get it. Believe me. You're going to inevitably keep going down this road, and we're going to turn around some other time and be like, well, how could this have ever happened? And the guy said, well, that's what I grew up with. We're just going to keep going the circle on this. You got to set limits to this thing.
And it's especially dangerous, this particular conversation, because there is now suddenly race injected into this. And it was injected into this by who? Who was circling the wagons? His fellow African Americans. That is disturbing to me because it opens up an entire other can of worms that is really totally unnecessary to this conversation.
I get the reality of it, Dom, when they talk about that, hey, there's one thing in this community or one thing in this region of the country versus another, but that doesn't, what are we going to do? To say, hey, you can do certain things in certain parts of the country and you can't do certain things in others, or hey, if you're a certain color and you're a 4-year-old kid, good luck, versus you're a 4-year-old kid in another one. We don't do that with other laws or rules.
And you can't paint us with a broad brush, but we'll paint ourselves with a broad brush when we need to get out of trouble.
Okay, I want to ask about the trouble the NFL is in on a broader level. We got another name here that we're all learning, Jonathan Dwyer. Okay, he's not going to be playing anytime soon for the Arizona Cardinals because he's not looking at one but 2 different charges. He arrested for allegedly headbutting his wife, breaking her nose in the process after she refused his advances. Officials say he later punched her in the face the next day and even threw a shoe at his 18-month-old son, thankfully missing the child in the process. He's facing aggravated assault charges. Okay, we all know what this comes back to, and there's this one thing that's gotten a lot of traction online. If I can show that picture here, this is a model that somebody mocked up. If you look at her face, you can see, obviously this is not an official NFL, but this image of a cover girl with a black eye, things gone viral here. I know before we said the NFL can survive anything because it's America's pastime. You're hearing the advertisers talking everything else. Are you starting to edge back, Dominic, thinking that they may not have a problem on their hands?
They have a public relations problem on their hands.
But you think it's just short term? Still?
Something's got to change. Something's going to change.
Maybe the commissioner.
But no, the commissioner's not going anywhere. Owners love him. I'm not saying it is right, but this has been an issue for the NFL for the last 40, 50 years. It's just now the media is playing it up.
You?
I think they have a PR problem on their hands, but I think the thing is just so popular. And when Sunday rolls around, as long as it doesn't impact their team, or even if it does impact their team, but people just want to see their team win. There seems to be a separation right now between the off-field behavioral problems and the on-field love of the game. They say that what ratings are down a little bit, but not significantly. And as long as the money keeps flowing in and the people keep watching, the NFL's not going to have a problem, at least not a long-term one.
It'll be interesting.
You know,
The
that
merchandising and the, and then as you said also, if any of the advertisers really do pull out, they just don't talk a good game.
Yeah.
if
That logo
something
is known as
changes.
the shield,
Yeah.
you know, and Goodell's mission in life is to, as you've been hearing a lot these days, protect the shield. That shield has been tarnished. I would not go to the bank with his next $44 million paycheck. Goodell is certainly in hot water.
I'm not saying he's necessarily made in the shade. I'm just
no.
saying that the
Yeah.
league will be
This
fine.
is- oh no, the league will be fine.
All right,
Goodell.
weigh in, everybody. Go online, go to Facebook and Twitter, and answer our question here. What should the standard be here when it comes to banning or suspending players? It seems to be a moving target, as we've seen. All right, when we come back here, we're talking some politics. We'll look at political wrangling in both D.C. and also push for control of the Senate. Why? Dr. Maringoff here, director of the Marist College Institute of Polling, says the Dems, they might have some trouble in their hands this fall.